And here we are. We are now recording, but don't worry. This is the version that will go up for all patrons and YouTube members, the unedited version. And then we're going to have the nice, cleaner, edited version, go up after that. Apologies for the mix up at the beginning there, but apparently this is better software. You guys are my guinea pigs.
Oh, thank you very much.
It feels a little bit like that at the moment.
We're all getting very used to all these different sort of Zoom competitors.
Well, yeah, you guys do interviews all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Okay. Right. So welcome everybody to, we'll start again because I was going to say something else that I'm doing tonight. Okay. Welcome everybody to Slope's Interview episode 2, where we get to chat to the awesome, the incredible, the legendary Oliver twins.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. For people that have watched my channel for a while, I recently did the Dizzy Complete History, so you guys should know who the Oliver twins are. But just in case people do not know
just go
who
and
you
watch
guys
that, because it was awesome what you did.
Oh,
Can't
thank you very
believe the
much.
amount of work you put into that. That was incredible.
It was a lot of work. It was an incredible amount of work. And before we get in, I will just say, I've had a lot of developers. I had the privilege this time of actually speaking to you guys whilst making it. But I've had a lot of times where I've made a complete history and then the developers have come to me afterwards. But I've never had a complete history where the dad of the creators also sent me an email to thank me. That I felt like I did that one right. You know, I was very happy with that. So for people out there that don't know what we're talking about, who you guys are or have definitely not seen the video, who are you guys?
Philip?
Yeah, I'm Philip.
I'm Andrew.
Together we're known as the Oliver Twins, and we've been writing games pretty much since the age of 12. And because that's quite a long time ago, we've written an enormous number of games. Back in the 80s, we did a lot of stuff for Codemasters, the Dizzy series, Simulator series, and a few others. We did things like Ghostbusters 2. But after that, we went on to run Blitz Games, set up a company, Blitz Games, got up to 250 people. After that, we set up another company to do Sky Saga, which sadly didn't go forward. And now we're just setting up another company, Panafox.
Excellent. Well, that's going to be one of my final questions, actually. Can we talk about what you're doing right now?
Not
Wasn't
a
sure
huge
we
amount.
could or couldn't say, but we'll definitely get there. So before we get down the road of Dizzy, a lot of people are going to want to hear a lot more about that. Let's actually go back to the beginning, as I say in my videos. What inspired you? What led you down this path of wanting to create video games, and a lot of them?
I'll go first. Yeah, because Philip does this. I mean, the fact is, we grew up as teenagers. When we were about 12 or 13, it was the time of Space Invaders and Pac-Man in the arcades. And we were just enthralled by the fact that you could control the TV. Got a Christmas present of one of those Pong machines, a sort of knockoff one. Wasn't an official Atari or whatever.
I think it was Binatone.
Yeah. Anyway, but we were competitive, and we just played this thing intently because the TV was a bit rubbish, and we don't really read books or play music or do art. We don't do any of those things. So you get bored quite quickly when there's not much on TV. But suddenly, like, hey, hang on, we can play games. And we started to get competitive. A friend of ours dad got an Apple II, and he had loads of games. So we were going around his house all the time playing games. And it was just like, oh, wow, this is just incredible because you can control the TV or control the computer screen, and it was competitive. Then it was the whole rise of the home computers, and we got some computers. I won't go into the full list because it's too long a story. But it was a case of we turned that competitive edge of trying to beat each other with score on beat each other with clever things that we could make the computer do that you can't make it. And I bet you don't know how I did this. And we just spent all this time like fascinating, but we're trying to beat each other, but try to sort of do things in a way collaboratively, but then within one sort of game or one little demo, do something that would impress the other one to say that we were clever than the other. And I think that is the story of an awful lot of the UK games industry, where brothers got these home computers and wanted to almost prove that they were cleverer than the other one. Like, it starts by just playing games, but if you play games too much, you just waste all of your time. Then but the ones who sort of like try to then be creative, and we've seen that now. I mean, people turn their love of game playing into being creative with the Minecraft and the Roblox and the Dreams and various other products like that. And that's really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've always said, like, it's very easy to diss the new age Minecraft younger player or something. But I know for a fact if Minecraft was around when I was younger, I would be absolutely obsessed with it. It's such an incredibly creative way to play. And the other ones you said there as well, Roblox and Dreams and what have you.
Yeah,
and other ones coming in the future. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, there are things coming in the future, but we can talk about that later. No,
or not.
Or not.
We can tell you about Crater if you like, because that's pretty awesome. I mean, if you're looking for next generation Minecraft and Roblox, look at Crater. Crayta, Crater.
Okay.
So the point is, when you used to turn on these home computers, the Spectrums and the Commodores, it was like be a blank screen with a cursor, and they come with manuals, and you could type in the listings, and you could try to create stuff and do things. Whereas this generation doesn't really have that. It's like you've got your PlayStation and your Xbox and your Nintendo Switches or whatever, or your phones, and it's like, well, where do you start being creative? The only way you can be creative is through creative programs, which sort of restricts people a bit.
And you guys actually made some of those yourself. The art program, you made like the art programs yourself and stuff.
So that's how we started. When we were still at school, it was the frustration. So we won a TV competition with a game called Strategy that came out as Gambit or vice versa. But if people look carefully, they'll notice that it was all about, it didn't have real graphics because it was line draws and fills and stuff. We'd gone beyond just text. It wasn't quite text, but we didn't have any way of putting in graphics because there weren't any art packages. I mean, people today, they got Photoshop and stuff, and all the sort of free ones. But
I used one of the free ones.
Technically, you could plot lots of different pixel colours onto the screen.
But there was nothing. No way of doing it. So, but like the programs would have line draw or like fill a rectangle and stuff. So our first game was like this, and it's like, how are we ever going to make a game with little characters or Pac-Man or something if we can't draw a little Pac-Man? It's like I can draw a circle and then you have to draw a triangle in it to cut out the yellow bit and stuff. It was just insane. So the first thing we did, or when we sort of got past the initial demos, was make an art package so that we could draw graphics. And we spent quite a lot of time on that. And that was called Easy Art because it was easy now to make art. And we sold it. And it was like, and you could buy it in W.H. Smith's. It was amazing. We got 200 quid for it or something. But then we was like, okay, we can do static art and we can do full screen. We can do loading screens as it was kind of back then. We need to do animated. So we then did Panda Sprites, and that was kind of flickbook animations and gave us various different ways of making these sprites. But the thing we realized very quickly is it's one thing to have tools to draw it and create it. The other thing is an engine that will plot it. So effectively, Panda Sprites, which we went on to sell, was middleware because we had the tools to make these little things, save them out into a format, which was like almost a GIF. You think of it as a GIF, but then you could load that into a program and then print it and move it around the screen and animate it at different speeds. And that was part of the package. And you could control that from BASIC. Sort of, you just load a little tiny extra piece of code, and then you could control these things just moving around the screen. And that's how we wrote a lot of our games. And that's probably why we knocked so many games out, because we made tools to make it possible.
Yeah, we made it really easy for ourselves. And in fact, that Panda Sprites, we did use it for most of our 8-bit games. And it was available in the shops. People could go and buy it and they could have done it themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know of that at the time.
It didn't sell very well.
No, it didn't sell very well at all.
I discovered today that when you released or at least when it actually came out, the magazine advert for the racing game that you put out there, that actually came out the same month I was Roadrunner. That came out the same month I was born, so I was slightly behind the curve a little bit there. So, I was talking about let's chat about some of the struggles that the UK coders had to actually get noticed. I mean, there was a lot of news articles out there about the millionaire bedroom coder and what have you.
Hey, we were some of those articles.
Yes,
but they weren't true. They weren't true.
But you know what? We're not going to go and try to take on the Daily Mail or whatever and say, "Oi, don't say that we're millionaires when we're not." we were doing all right, okay, for like young kids and stuff. But the thing is, what do you do when people they just inflate stories? I mean, that is the newspapers through and through, just inflating these stories.
But
actually, it helped us in some ways. It was quite fun. It was quite fun to be in the middle of that.
It was, but it was painting a false picture. I mean, we've met some of these other programmers that were also whiz kids, and there were very few people actually getting really rich. They were getting moderately rich, but the numbers that were in the newspapers and stuff, they'd been exaggerated by PR departments and then exaggerated again by people like the Daily Mail.
Just add a couple of zeros on the end.
Yeah, it just makes the story more impressive.
You're adding nothing really by putting zeros on.
Yeah,
of course. It definitely went up for you guys after your early works. I think there was one called Caveman you made. Was there? KV, of course, yes.
Micro.
But that all changed when you met the Darlings. Did you want to explain that story?
Sure. So we'd been writing lots of games for lots of different people and basically sending cassettes out to lots of different people, and there were lots of very small publishers setting up all over the place, and to a certain extent taking liberties and exploiting young teenagers who were...
No, really?
Yeah, but they were. Who basically found that these teenagers would be kind of writing games and then sending them in, and some of them were good games, and so they'd kind of publish them on the promises of lots of royalties and lots of money, and most of the time didn't deliver. Sometimes it's because the games didn't sell particularly well. Sometimes it's just because they didn't have to pay because this 13-year-old didn't have a lawyer.
Right.
So what does it matter? So there was a lot of exploitation going on and some of that happened to us. And when we met the Darling brothers, here were two brothers that it sort of happened to them a little bit. They'd kind of had a little kind of, run-ins with a few of these people, but they sort of had enough success because they were kind of almost a year ahead of us. They'd had enough success that they were going to set up their own publisher and be honest about it and pay people what they were supposed to be paid, and do everything honorably, which I'll be honest was a breath of fresh air to us. And we also really connected with them. They were our same age as us. I think one is the same age and one's a year older. David's a year older, that's right, and Richard's the same age as us. And they were programmers and game designers themselves. And we could really connect with that. So, but they were saying, well, we'll treat you fairly and we'll tell you exactly what it is. And we also have this philosophy that the quality of the game matters, which you might think that's a unique perspective. But actually, some of the people running some of these software companies, they didn't actually care. Which is why things like E.T. came out, looking the way it did.
Yeah,
because it kind of didn't matter.
Just duplicate a load of stuff, chuck it on the shelf and accept that it will sell through sooner or later, but they'll be more focused on the next stuff.
It was actually one of the reasons I started the channel, because I was so interested in this UK scene. If you go back and look at the magazines, there is entire sections of games to buy that are based on Donkey Kong, or entire sections based on Pac-Man or Maze games, and because they were just shovel. There was the definition of the word shovelware.
There was. Shovelware was used a lot.
Yeah.
And people didn't really care about just copying anything and everything. And it's just like, it did seem a bit wrong.
The other philosophy that Codemasters had, which obviously was a bit of a breakthrough, was the whole budget software. I mean, that's what they were known for. That's what they did very well. But their philosophy was that if you produce high quality games and you put them out at a decent price, people won't copy them and they will sell 3 or 4 times the number of units. If they sell 3 or 4 times the number of units, the publisher makes the same money as if they were selling them expensively, and so does the game developer as if they were selling them expensively. But the customer doesn't have the same expectation, and they get better value for money because they paid a quarter of the price or whatever. And it seemed like a good strategy and a good philosophy, and it meant high volume of sales. And to a certain extent, as artists, we did care about the money, but we also wanted lots of people playing our games. This got like 4 or 5 times the number of people playing our games and effectively the same money as if you were selling them more expensively. So to us, that just seemed like a win.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you'd met the Darlings. This was at a trade show. They'd got you excited with a large figure of money for your first game to be working with them.
We showed them a one-page paper design, handwritten, Super Robin Hood, basically saying that it was a side-on platformer. You're Robin Hood, you're bow and arrow, you're exploring, you've got to find Maid Marian, find treasure along the way, and shoot guards. No sword fighting. Couldn't do hand-to-hand combat. And we sold them on the concept, just saying, look, people get what Robin Hood is. They just hear the name and they were, yeah, we get it. And so we said, so if we wrote this game for you, and we've got a lot of other games we've written, so it's not like we can't write games. If we wrote this for you, how much money would you give us? And David said £10,000. It's like, oh my God. I mean, that's, in today's money, that's more like 25,000 or something. And we're
yeah.
We were writing games and getting £200 a time, pretty much. And so to suddenly hear that figure, it's like, okay, yeah, I think we can do that. We got a deal. And we were just out of school and we were trying to make games about one a month. And we were like, well, okay, we'll write that game and we'll bring it back to you and we'll see you end of the month. Because this was the first week of September and we got it back to them pretty much the end of the month. Went back and said, there you go, finished game. They loaded it up, had a look at it, had to play it and said, that's brilliant. Then brought out the contract, which, was a royalty of 10 pence per cassette sold. And we said, well, what about £10,000? And they said, oh, that was an estimate. That wasn't an offer. We're going to give you £10,000. It's an estimate of royalties. We think we'll sell 100,000, in which case it'll all add up. And we're like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. And they obviously sensed our disappointment and said, but look, guys, it's a great game. We'll give you a £2,000 advance now. We'll go and write you a check right now to sign the contract. And so we thought, well, that's still 10 times what we're usually getting. And it's an advance. So you never know. It might go bigger. And it did. I mean, it went straight to number one. Codemasters arranged getting it converted onto the Commodore 64 and the Spectrum. And that brought in even more royalties for us. They had a system.
And it did make about 10,000. It was about that amount. So therefore, all was good. So, I mean, we were just keen to just do it again and again and again. I mean, we just like, oh, blooming heck. That worked quite well. Let's just do it again. And so we did.
In hindsight, I mean, looking back, do you think they was a little bit lofty with their £10,000 pledge that they put down in front of you, even if that was what, it's
a salesman's technique, isn't it? I mean, it was relatively honourable. I mean, it was slightly overselly in the fact that, hey, look, if you write that game for us, we'll give you £10,000. And then when we actually look at the contract, it's like, well, it's 10 pence per unit. We think we'll sell 100,000, but we'll give you 2,000 now. To be honest, it's relatively honourable. I mean, they used a bit of a hard sales technique to get us through the door. But then they actually did deliver. They made the sales. They did all the conversion work. And that relationship went on for many, many years. And we produced an enormous number of games for them.
I mean, we've run businesses and you have to sort of like work out cash flows and all sorts of things and work out all your expenses. And I wouldn't be surprised if when they were sort of like putting their business plan together, they're going, right, how much does it cost to get in a game? Right. Let's put down 10 grand per game. Right. How many do we think we can sell of games or whatever? If we got a good game, like maybe 100,000 sales. So they probably had been forecasting certain things, and you do pick on these round figures.
But equally, from a cash flow point of view, you don't want to actually give that money up front. One, because the game might fall apart. But
sorry,
you're all right.
Sorry.
You're right.
And then I had a bloody heart attack because of that. Look.
Something cleaning your window.
I had no idea we had a window cleaner in, and it's like suddenly just something went bang against the window, and it's like. There's a big brush on a stick.
There you go.
Jesus.
There you go. So you'd done the game. It had done very, very well. I'm sure you guys were happy with the results on that particular game and happy with the results of that initial, interview where they just instantly said, this game is good enough to at least give, like you say, £2,000 straight up. That was, like you say, crazy amounts compared to what you had already been given.
Correct.
This led to, Ghost Hunters afterwards.
Yes.
Yep. And then that led on to
do Grand Prix Simulator, and Grand Prix Simulator really went even bigger. I mean, it probably
Codemasters' first racing game.
Indeed, it was, and the concept came from the fact that Richard Darling's first launch game for Codemasters. But the two brothers, to launch the company, wrote one game each to sort of have some sort of initial games out there before the rest of the programmers came along. Richard Darling's game was BMX Simulator on the Commodore 64, and it went down really well, really successful. But when we were talking to Richard and David, whilst working on Ghost Hunters, we said cars would have been a better subject. We've done like a car top down. We were in the process of doing that before Robin Hood. We've done a car top down. We could do that. And they were like, yeah, if you want. And that's what turned into Grand Prix Simulator. There was a bit of controversy, when it was launched, because Atari had just launched Super Sprints in the arcade, and it was a really big deal, Super Sprint. So they'd licensed it for home computer versions, and those home computer versions had just started programming when our game came out. And to be fair,
it's a top-down racer.
Simulator was pretty good. It's a good top-down racer. About a year before the official Super Sprint came out.
For people that don't understand the correlation of why it's important for Codemasters' first racing game, of course, one of the more popular top-down racing games that Codemasters were eventually known for were Micro Machines, which I believe a lot of that DNA is in your original games.
Yes. So what actually happened was when we decided, as the 8-bit era of home computer games were coming to an end, sort of in about 89, and they were starting to sort of all the sales dropping off because everybody had converted onto 16-bit machines, we and Codemasters took a trip to America to CES in Las Vegas. That's a bit of an eye-opener, going to Las Vegas, I can tell you. But what was massively eye-opening was the size of the industry, of the games industry in America, but the dominance of the NES, the 8-bit Nintendo machine. And we were looking at these games things like the Super Mario Brothers as the best example, obviously, but we were looking at all these other games thinking they're about the same quality as we put out, or worse in some cases, and yet they're selling for $30 each on cartridges and can't be pirated. And they're selling hundreds of thousands. And we're like, we could knock these out one a month. It's like, so we decided to move as fast as possible onto making games for the NES. Now, obviously the NES wasn't big in the UK, but that didn't matter. We just thought, well, we'll just sell a lot of copies in America, and then maybe we'll convert them back to, UK home computers, which is roughly what did happen. But of course, the two big leading titles that Codemasters had at the time to launch with was Grand Prix Simulator and the Dizzy series. Well, they sort of said, well, we'll do those two games as the first two games out the door, but they're both the Oliver Twins games. And we said, well, we'll take care of one of them and somebody else will have to take care of the other. We felt that Dizzy needed our hand on it because it was a much more creative game, whereas Grand Prix Simulator, you kind of know what the deal is. It's like it's a top-down racing game. It's more the title that matters. So Andrew Graham started to convert that. He'd already converted Treasure Island Dizzy. He'd already converted Pro Ski Simulator of ours. So he took it. But then finding they were looking for a distributor and a publisher in America to actually distribute all the NES cartridges, and they came across Camerica and then Galoob. Galoob are the people behind Micro Machines. And when Galoob saw this game, they said, no, actually, a top-down racer, that should be called Micro Machines. And so the game then morphed into Micro Machines.
There you go. And Micromachine's such an incredible title, and I tell you what,
It was brilliant. Andrew Graham and all the people involved, Toby and people, they did an awesome job on it. And I'll be honest, we played it a lot. In fact, it slowed down our development because we were playing it so much while it was being developed.
Well, that's great to hear. We've jumped forward a little bit there because obviously I'm going to be talking about the creation of Dizzy a little bit. But whilst we're on this particular subject, there's someone, one of my patrons, David Levy, did ask this amazing question. I'm going to read it out how he's put it here. As an American, I'd love for me to ask the Oliver twins how they and some of the other UK-based video game developers became so adept at squeezing impressive performance out of the Nintendo Entertainment System. 30 years ago, when he was 12, he saw the fantastic adventures of Dizzy on a TV shopping channel and immediately bought it with his money.
Brilliant. We know that advert. That TV shopping channel. We didn't know what these TV shopping channels were. But someone had to sort of tell us
videotape it and send it to us.
Yeah. It was like when you've got cable network, you can have so many channels, but then there's so many channels that some of them they're just filled with adverts. And we're going, why would you have a channel full of adverts? Oh, it's really interesting. It's like the adverts are really long. They're like 30 or 20 minutes, 30 minutes like adverts. And we're going, really? That sounds like a bad idea. And they're quite funny to watch because it's like market traders just like constantly going on. And they said, yeah, we got Dizzy on there with various ways of trying to sell it. And they said, the one that really struck with people, and maybe he watched this thing that we were told that was so successful, is
we watched it on the videotape as well.
Yeah, so there was this granny in front of a Nintendo with her granddaughter, with the controller playing it and saying, "Granny, how would I do this?" And she said, "Oh, how would I get the water out of the well? Well, you need to use the bucket." And it's like, but the bucket will just, if I put it in the well, it just falls down the well. It's like, well, tie the whip to it then. And there was this little thing with the granny helping the granddaughter. And then the granny turns to the camera and said, I never thought I'd be playing video games with my granddaughter. And it's like,
do you think it was scripted or do you think that was genuine?
It was a little bit of both. But they said the phones went mental with all these people sort of buying it. And it was probably grandparents buying something for their grandkids, thinking, like, I know that they're always stuck on their Nintendos. I'll be able to actually talk to them about what they're playing, because it looked like that granny is talking to her goddaughter or granddaughter.
You haven't really answered, Andrew, how we squeezed it in such a small amount of memory.
Yeah, it was.
And he was saying that squeezed them all of our Nintendo games onto one cartridge now that you can buy. So all of our Nintendo games.
There it is on
all of our Nintendo games, all on one cartridge. There you go.
There it is on the
portable Evercade. So we did a lot of Nintendo games.
Yes, you did. You did. They actually said that he saved up his birthday money to get it, and it was almost like playing a Super NES game on an NES. And years later, he learned that the NES wasn't very popular in the UK, which added to his curiosity about how a British developer seemed to understand and exploit its hardware so well.
So that's correct. It wasn't that big in the UK, and that's why when we went to the CES in Las Vegas, it blew our minds of how many people were buying NES games, the sales volume, the expense of the cartridges. But then we looked at the quality, and okay, there's a few good ones, like your Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, fair play, good game. Might have inspired one of ours.
Well, incredible.
But a lot of them, we were like, actually, that's really not very good. It's like, that doesn't really kind of pass muster. And you talk to the publisher and sometimes developers on the stands and go, so how many is that one sold? Oh, 120,000 didn't do very well. 120,000? It's like, that's amazing. And we're thinking the game's not too good. So we really genuinely thought we could do much better. And we did. And I guess, we'd got the skills to do it. Squeezing a lot into a small amount of RAM is a skill and an art. That's what we did. But we have actually written this all up in a big article, and it's actually on our website. We wrote up how we squeezed games into Spectrum and games into the NES. That is one of the articles in Wireframe, and it's actually on the Oliver Twins website. There's a scan of the article of how did we fit it in.
Yeah, and it
goes
into all the algorithms. it actually sort of talks about it, because we were writing quite a big it's a 6-page feature, and so we went back to the code, and I tried to get some of it compiling again, but just to remind myself of the sort of, we used to do the sort of memory layouts and work out how much we would allow for the graphics, the map and the way in which we'd store the graphics and stuff. But you've got to remember, it did weird things, like every sprite is 4 colors, and so it's like
it's all indexed off.
Yeah,
I have to say, the machine itself is genius. The NES itself is a genius piece of machinery, because it is able to give such high quality games from such a small amount of technology in RAM and processing speed. I mean, it's a genius bit of architecture.
I mean,
it seems to be Nintendo's way throughout their life. Actually, some of their consoles are very similar to that.
I mean, it is interesting, because I mean, we love Nintendo and all the machines that they've made, and their games are so nicely designed.
There was one a bit iffy recently, but we won't talk about that.
Anyway, yes,
I do want you to talk about that.
Yeah, the Wii U didn't do very well.
Oh right, that thing.
Yeah, we didn't do any games for that.
No, we didn't. But what I was going to say is the fact that actually, technology-wise, the chips and the graphics and stuff have always been under spec compared to their competitors. But it almost doesn't matter. It depends what you're trying to create. And they are ultimately a toy company, and they know what makes a good game and a good price and a good sell. And I mean, things like the Nintendo Switch, it's like, hang on, how are they competing with the latest PlayStation? It's like, well, actually they're competing really well, because they're bloody good games, and it's the right kind of format for that. It's a different format. So that's not to take away from the Xbox or the PlayStation, but, when it comes to their machines, they're less spec'd, but often better games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm a huge collector of the Nintendo Switch, I say I've got a hardcore amount of love for the Wii U, because some of the best games for the Switch are actually just ports of the games that were on the very bad selling Wii U. It's just there you go. That's marketing for you, though. So,
well, if you want to know real marketing, the GameCube sort of suffered badly, and we'd written several GameCube games. And whilst we were writing GameCube, we were going to write a GameCube game. We did a lot of games for peripherals, like the karaoke games that we did. I think you can probably see one of our karaoke games just behind me there. We did games of peripherals, and we were sent the Nintendo wand, and it was for the GameCube, and it was going to be a new controller for the GameCube, but the GameCube was suffering a little bit, and they did a whole sort of rebranding. Actually, it's kind of so good, we're going to launch a new console. And the new console, the Wii, which suddenly sold phenomenally well, is roughly a GameCube. It's not like they didn't move it on that much. It's like
it has a GameCube built in, doesn't it?
It probably does, because it is pretty much a GameCube.
I mean, you can play GameCube games on a Wii.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, because I think
they just upped the memory and the processor speed, but it's pretty much the same architecture.
And double the size of the disc. It was regular discs as opposed to sort of little weird ones.
Now, I do want to, because I mean, you guys get asked about Dizzy a lot, and the history of the UK coding scene, all that sort of stuff. So I do want to talk a lot more about those the Blitz Games years. But before we do that, we should really jump back just a little bit there. How did Dizzy come about? Before we get to that.
Like I say, I'll do this one since I did it. So we were working on Ghost Hunters. I was drawing, within the Panda Sprites package, I was just drawing the little animated man, which might have been slightly inspired from Mission Impossible,
the Commodore 64 game.
Yeah, the Commodore 64 game. And I was just drawing this little animated man, and it was quite difficult to draw and get it all right. But what kind of occurred to me, and I was kind of talking to Andrew, because we were sort of sitting there next to each other, just how few pixels I had for the head. And it's like I had 3 colours, because you've got 4 colours in a sprite, but one of them's transparent. So you've got 3 colours, and I've got 3 pixels wide by 3 pixels high to do a whole head. And I was like, do I put something black for his eyes? Do I put a pixel for his nose? Oh, look, he looks like he's Pinocchio, or he looks like he's a boxer and he's been punched in the face too many times. It's like, it's either pixel on or pixel off. I don't know. And I was having this conversation with Andrew, and then just went off, meandered off to just draw a big face instead. Just like, oh, well, you could do this. And I just ended up drawing a face, which was pretty much egg shape. And saying, look, if you had a big face, you could kind of put lots of expression into it. You can make his eyes blink and change his mouth shapes and everything. But there's not enough screen space to have a character that could have a whole body. So we were like, oh, well, that's a bit of a problem. So I said, well, if you just, at the bottom of the face, put 2 boots, and on the side, you put 2 arms, it kind of looks kind of like a little cute character, but you can kind of see expression on his face. So I just did that one morning in a few hours. And then because Behind the Sprites had a feature to make him spin, I was like, hey, look, you can rotate him. It's like, it looks quite cute. Oh, well, back to Ghost Hunters. But it just kept playing on our minds. I'd done this little project, and shown this little character, and we were saying, it would be really nice to design a cartoon character of our own. I mean, we grew up watching all the sort of classic cartoons like Hung Kong Phooey and Roadrunner and Tom and Jerry and all these kind of things. Wouldn't it be really cool if we managed to invent our own cartoon character? Do you remember that funny little character egg thing that we did? Oh, maybe we go back and make a game with that. So after we finished Grand Prix Simulator, finished Ghost Hunters, finished Grand Prix Simulator, I was like, maybe that's our little cartoon character. Let's put him into a world. We've already done the castle with Super Robin Hood. We've done a haunted mansion, classic, with Ghost Hunters. What are we going to do this time? We said, well, let's do a sort of a fantasy world, kind of a Hobbit type, sort of Lord of the Rings type world, but with this little cartoon character. I think Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, I know a lot of people don't like that cartoon. I thought it was okay. Andrew thought it was okay. We used to watch it. And we thought, sort of Dungeons and Dragon-y. So for our setting, was a good setting for our little cartoon character.
And then another thing that sort of frustrated us is some of the games that were really popular at the time with things like Jet Set Willy and Manic Miner. And they're good games. They're standard platform games. But these things just kill you all the time. And we kept on saying, why is it developers have to make games so flaming hard? It's like in the arcades, they have to kill you because they want you to put more money in. But you've bought this thing already. Why can't you just play it for the evening? Why does it have to kill you? So we were making a platform game and saying, let's not have it just kill you all the time because that just is annoying. So what's the gameplay if it's not
what's the challenge? What's the challenge?
What is the challenge? And it's like, well, let's make it. There were text adventures back in those days and some early graphic adventures which try to draw the screen. And we said, let's just make this a sort of a graphic adventure, but you're controlling it like an arcade game.
Like an arcade game.
I mean, interestingly, and almost it feels like a mistake now, is we felt that we had to kill him occasionally because people thought it wouldn't be a game. So we got weird things like acid rain, like you have to just dodge, because that's what an arcade game would do. They would kill you occasionally and you'd have to have some dexterity. But the way it's stuck in people's minds is the fact that we'd built up these little stories and little characters that needed help. And he was the one who would go around walking backwards and forwards. He was the hero walking backwards and forwards trying to help everyone. It's like, yeah, everyone blooming helpless in those games.
So yeah, you'd created Dizzy, took that into to the Codemasters guys, and from my understanding, at first it wasn't the most popular of your games.
They didn't get it. So I sort of said about quality of games back in those days wasn't the most important thing. It was with Codemasters, but with a lot of publishers.
He's breaking up.
He's breaking up a little bit there.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we had just written Grand Prix Simulator, which actually did sell really well, to the tune of 250,000. So you can work out how much money we got, on our temporary royalties. But it was selling really well. And they were sort of saying, oh, we want another game like that. And it's like, well, by the time those sales were coming through, we were halfway through the Dizzy game. And they were kind of really not quite sure about this thing because it was very different. And they were like, really? But David, we kind of heard, I don't think he said it to our face at the time, but famously he was like, well, we'll publish it because like they've got a bit of a name, and we want to keep working with them because we want another Grand Prix and we don't want other games like that. And the games are selling. But what they did is they sold it. They thought it was quirky, but on the front of the box, they said, by the famous Oliver twins, knowing that on Grand Prix Simulator, it says by the Oliver twins. And that's where it started to become a bit of a thing that people would look out for that as a branding. But they did that because otherwise it just looked so random and obscure, people would ignore it. And they said, well, you seem to have, like, you are knocking out enough that people are noticing, like, the authors. Whereas if you think about all the other games from Codemasters, nobody really knows who the authors are of all the other games. And that was kind of a slight side effect of the fact that they weren't sure about it, but that might help the sales. Because people knew that we'd written Robin Hood, which was a #1 bestseller, and they knew that we'd written Grand Prix Simulator, which is now a #1 bestseller. And I think Ghost Hunters did pretty well. So yeah, that sort of helped us. And yeah, it didn't sell particularly well, to be fair. But they got an awful lot of fan mail. Because on the cassettes, it used to say, if you've got any problems and the cassettes don't load or anything like that, then, you can ask for like a new cassette or something, and it put their address on. But they got just tons and tons of letters, to the point where we went up one time. We didn't work in their offices. We just worked from home. We went to their office and they had a mail sack, a huge mail sack of letters addressed to the Oliver twins at Codemasters, and said, these are all yours. And it was like, oh my God, what the hell's that? And they go, well, people keep writing in saying that they're stuck on certain puzzles or whatever. And it was like, and they said, we're not sure what to do with all these letters. And it's like, because we don't really want to answer them. And if we have to answer each one, even if we had a standard reply and posted back an answer to all of these people, it would actually, we'd lose money on every sale, because the postage would cost more than the money that they can make off a cassette, that kind of thing. And it was like, well, we got to do something. So we made a sort of cheat sheet, and then it was ending up, the cheat sheet became something they could post back. And I think they did post back, which was very good of them. So people would have got those. But we turned it into one of those phone lines. And it was a recorded message phone line, simply because actually these were the days before the internet. And if you were completely stuck and you really wanted help, then actually, if someone's prepared to go out of their way to write a letter to the publisher and expect a letter back, not only have they put in significant effort, they're going to wait for a couple of weeks. Whereas actually the phone line is like, just phone up the phone number. But the way in which those phone numbers were made is you actually pay a premium number, which we didn't necessarily want. That was like a side effect. It was like we were literally trying to stop all the letters coming in that had to be answered by hand, thinking, well, just put it on an answer machine. Like, let the answer machine just read out the solution. And then this was a service that BT were doing. And there's a side effect that actually that made money as well, because it was a premium number.
That was, I remember reading up on that. You actually earned quite a good bit. I read that in that, Oliver Twins book that, you guys personally gave me, actually, that book.
Yes.
When we met up, many, many years ago. There you go. But,
well, it was a side effect, but it was funny how I think the phone number made as much as the game itself. And it was like, oh, that was kind of weird. It just sort of shows you. But I think George Lucas has a similar story with Star Wars and merchandise.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, Philip, are you still with us?
I think he's gone. He's probably just trying to log in. He does live in the sticks, and they just don't have the broadband. He gets his internet through his phone, so he's got a sort of 4G phone.
Okay.
But he said even then it's a little bit iffy. So sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right.
Anyway, we'll carry on. He will come back. I'm absolutely sure. But he's probably just trying to work something out.
Yeah,
He'll be at the bottom of his garden.
He was still recording.
He'll come in on the bottom of his garden on his phone.
My worry is that if I keep recording the call, he won't be able to get back in. But I don't know how it works. We'll play along just for a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Okay.
So, yes, during those early days, you said there about how you used the Super Robin Hood, because that was, a license that people understood, but it was a license that you guys didn't need to pay for.
That's right.
Philip is back.
It's a trick that Disney have been doing for years.
Can you hear us?
I think, well, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
And we can hear you.
Yes, yeah, that's good. You're even in high res now.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good.
No,
right. So I'll start that part again. Like I say, this is the Patreon YouTube member version, so we can, I'll clean this up for when it goes up live. So, as I said, in the early days, you used to use well-known names that weren't necessarily licenses that you had to pay for, like your Robin Hood. Everyone knows what Robin Hood is, and you don't have to pay any licensing fees for that. But in your later years, especially with the Blitz games, and even with Ghostbusters 2, I suppose, in the earlier years, you did actually end up working with a whole heap licenses. The biggest names out there, Disney.
Absolutely.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us some of the better ones that you've worked with and some of the not so great ones that you've worked with.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Well, Mummy Returns was a nightmare to work on.
Okay.
Jesus. So we got a script, and when we said, "Can we see what it looks like?" They go, "You can pop down a video rental and get your own. You can go and get your own copy of Mummy, the original
one." So that was our reference.
Work it
was
out.
the original? Yeah, the original film and the script. And
you had the script for the second film.
Yeah, the script for the second film.
Yeah, so, right, the returns.
So there's some incredible mistakes. I have to say, it happened time and time again because we did, War Games and Lilo and Stitch and Little Mermaid and things.
No, War Games was all right. because the film was out, so that was okay.
Sorry?
We knew what
War Games
was out, so that was the material was out there. Everybody could see it.
It was a film I remember Lilo and Stitch. There's a funny thing because in our script it said the character rolls or something. No, it said it spins, and we said, "Oh yeah, it spins like Taz." So I think in the game it spins, but in the film it rolls like a sort of rolled up armadillo. But it's like, well, not in our script it didn't, and we didn't see the cartoon. So every single person who plays the game has seen the film, which is an advantage over the developer who hadn't.
Yeah.
Now think about that one.
The same happened with The Mummy Returns. Everybody saw the film before they played the game. We'd finished and mastered the game before we saw the film. It's just like,
and so, I mean, it was a little bit of a broken thing. I mean, it came from the fact that what happened was games were seen as merchandise off the back of a film, and it goes through the licensing departments, and the licensing departments are generally for T-shirts and mugs and various other things. And so
lunchboxes. You're in the lunchbox department.
We got the gigs because we had a bit of a reputation, but we had to turn things around quick. We were signing pretty big contracts on the condition that you better deliver and it better be fast. And it was like, and each time we were promised, we'll try and get you raw footage and rough footage. And
if we can.
Yeah, I think, Philip, you actually on Judge Dredd went down to Pinewood Studios, didn't you? You actually went down to the studio where they were filming it, but I don't think you saw anything.
You don't see much. I mean, you hear about how they shoot things like Star Wars, where it's like in a room with a green screen and one actor with a broomstick or whatever. And it's like, and unfortunately, that's how movies are kind of made. So it almost doesn't matter that you've been to the stage set to see it. It doesn't actually help. It's like, well, I don't know how that's going to look. I remember being walked around the Alien stage set, and being blown away by the aliens, plural, because obviously I was a big fan of Alien 1. And it was in one hangar, one studio hangar, at Fox, and it was one piece of corridor in a straight line, which was about 20 foot long, a T-junction with a curve of kind of just a C shape of corridor, and that was it. And they go, "That's it. That's our stage set." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And they go, "We can do everything on that." And it's like,
they just move bits around and light it differently and chuck some dunk in.
Change the cameras, change this. It's like, we've got a T-junction, we've got a straight corridor, we've got a curved corridor, we've got there's a corridor on the left, there's a corridor on the right.
Star Trek was famous for that. I think Blade Runner was even worse. I think Blade Runner was like, you can just film out in the back alley. It's amazing what they do. Hollywood is incredible what they do. But when you're trying to work with them, it's quite hard. I mean, in later years, we'd get storyboards. I think we did have some storyboards of Little Mermaid and Lilo and Stitch.
That's impressive.
Which actually is pretty good. In fact, I've probably got... Yeah, in fact, there you go. Just because I've got things just kicking around, I think... I don't know if you can see that. I have a lot of stuff kicking around.
We may be able to see like at the end, but is that the Lilo and Stitch script?
That's the Lilo and Stitch. That's the original script, and that's what we worked from. And that's what they send you. And it's like, and it's stamped up to say it's confidential. And if you photocopy this, everyone will know that you've copied it and stuff. But I got various scripts and all sorts of stuff kicking around. Too much junk actually in my room. You don't want to see. Try to make sure that the camera shot is clean. But yeah, if you could see the amount of other stuff I've got, which is kind of fun.
Most of it's in your loft, actually. To be fair, you keep all the Blitz stuff in the loft, and I keep all the Oliver Twins stuff in my loft. And there's quite a lot of stuff.
Wow. Okay. And what about some of the better people you've worked with? I suppose you said Disney there, but some of the better licenses.
Chicken Run. I absolutely love Chicken Run.
Oh yeah, Chicken Run. Yeah, Aardman. They did an
Just
awesome
running
job.
up around.
Yeah, he's just looking around for all his.
I don't know. I've got some things kicking around.
But I mean, I have to say that actually going down to the Aardman studio and watching how they move the little plasticine models and take a photograph and then move the little limbs around and take a photograph. Unbelievable painstaking, but unbelievably talented to be able to produce these long scenes with the camera flying through it and lots of characters in the scene. It's incredible artistry, incredibly painstaking. I mean, you've got a whole bunch there.
Well, yeah, I really ought to go and have a proper set. I don't know. I just keep picking them up. But there you go. I mean, we did a lot of SpongeBob games.
You got your SpongeBob there for the PlayStation 2, yeah.
And we were doing it for Xbox and Nintendo's, whatever the Nintendo was at the time.
Yeah.
That was quite a fun one. That was one that people always bring up. They go, "Oh, you did Barbie horse riding." It's like, because it was super popular with girls, but got super slagged off by all the journalists. And it's like, well, look, only buy it if you're buying it for a 6-year-old girl, you know? It's like, it says it on the box. But we had great fun making it because we were mostly sort of blokes.
The journalists weren't 6-year-old girls, by the way. So the when we got slagged off in reviews, it was because it was
they were 20-year-old blokes.
It was handed to a like 18, 19-year-old guy going, yeah, write a review for that. There was one review that we really loved. He basically slagged it off in the whole article, and right at the end, last line was, "So I gave it to my sister. She quite liked it. My little sister or something. She really liked it." It's like
that's what we made it for.
Yeah.
So we did Frogger.
Frogger.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, my sister actually very much enjoyed that game when it came out, and I remember I played it quite a bit as well for the PlayStation 1. Yeah,
we actually. Sorry, I'm just going to go get something else. We kind of made Frogger 3. We didn't make Frogger 3. We made Zapper, which was a victory. That was in the heritage, because that was what we made as the next game. By the same publisher, but they'd lost the license. So they'd lost the license.
This was Infogrames. Konami took the license off them of Frogger, but it was one of their biggest selling titles, and they loved Frogger too. So they turned around to us
just
and
said, "Well, make another
character.
one."
Just do what you would have done for the sequel. But just do a different character.
So it was quite funny.
Cricket.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously the first one's a frog, and so you've got the scale that he's going around the countryside, like jumping over things, and obviously we're building out far more than a road and a river with logs. And it was like, well, what hops around? It's quite small that can be in the same sort of environments. It's like cricket. Oh yeah, that's really quite clever.
Hey, what's more?
It's a really nice game.
It does mean that the funny thing is that Frogger, if he goes into water, he
kills
dies.
Him.
He's a frog.
Right.
Now, if you're a cricket and you go in
water,
that is a bit of a serious problem.
Yeah,
so it kind of makes
so much more sense.
Cricket.
Yeah.
Zapper,
I don't know.
If you've not played Zapper, Zapper's a cool game. Zapper's really cool. Didn't sell as well, unfortunately, because it did.
Another one that we did. We did a few Action Man games.
You did, yeah.
Which was kind of fun. Interesting little side note on that. I mean, we'd done we made the game War Games for NGM, and on finishing War Games, they absolutely loved it and said, "We own James Bond. Would you like to do work on James Bond?" And we were like, "Would we?" And it's like, so we started making a demo, but then MGM fell into trouble, and then EA took over the license, and they didn't come to us for that game. But we had a really nice sort of James Bond demo, but we were working with the Hasbro toy company who on a game called Glover, and they said, "Well, we own Action Man, and we loved your James Bond demo. Can you make it into Action Man?" We were like, "Yeah, we can do." And then they go, "Right." So we started into the idea that we'd do that, and then he said, "Well, can you take out all killing, all guns, all bombs, any garrote wires and knives?" And it's like, hang on a moment.
Action Man is not allowed to die.
Yeah, so hang on, you've taken every single game mechanic out, but it was really interesting because
it's a hell of a challenge.
it set us a really good challenge. It's like, well, make an action game like a James Bond, but don't have any violence because it's got to be sold to kids. And actually, we ended up with all sorts of interesting puzzles where we just had to say, well, what sort of close combat and projectile weapons that are non-lethal. So we had sort of tasers and catch nets and like rubber bullets and stuff. We did all of the mechanics, but we dressed them up in a non-lethal version.
Oh, he's gone now. Oh, God. He's gone.
It's just me and you, Philip. It's right. This is what happened to you a moment ago.
Oh, man.
It's still recording, so he'll be able to come back in.
He's actually got fibre to the door, so there's no excuse there. I'm actually on a mobile phone signal because I live out in the sticks and they haven't put any decent wiring to this place. So I use mobile.
So, okay, well, I'll continue on, and if he comes back in, we'll go back and start it again. But I'm looking back through here. So, everyone knows you for Dizzy, but in recent years, the way the internet works, Glover has blown up. People really love Glover.
Oh, that's nice. Or whack and roll, as we like to call it.
Yeah. Okay.
So right until the end, it was whack and roll. It was. So the background and the concept from that came about because me and Andrew went to Florida with our parents. And going around Disney World and all those kind of things. But in the evening, right next to the hotel, there was this really good crazy golf course. I think it's called Pirates Cove in Florida. I believe it's quite famous and it's really good.
Yeah.
And we were really taken by it. So we went there a couple of times while we were there. And we're like, man, I wonder if you could make this into a video game. So we came back and we had artists by this time. We were making video games by this time. And we said, well, what we really need is you control the putter and you've got these lovely scenes and you roll a ball through it. And we did some concepts, but the putter needed personality because that's what you control. And we're all about people have to have empathy in the characters they control. So we had to turn the putter. Hello, Andrew. We had to turn the putter into a character. Well, when you put arms, little eyeballs onto a putter and little arms and stuff, it kind of looks like the Pepper Army, which is kind of, and it just didn't look really very good at all. So we started coding, we started doing the art, and we're like, our character looks rubbish. So that's a problem and that we have to fix. And then the other problem was that when you hit the ball, if you know you've made a duff hit, you have to just sit there and watch it and go, well, I lace that one up. Bugger all I can do about it now because it's off and it's going in the wrong direction, but there's nothing I can do about it. So then we were talking to the publisher about this. I know it was Richard Brown, but I think he moved around several times. I think he started at Philips CDI and he really wanted to buy it. And then he moved across to somewhere else and wanted to buy it. And then it went back to Hasbro. So the game morphed a little bit in the early days. But we were in a restaurant with him talking about these two problems. And we said, and we took a tennis ball. I haven't got a tennis ball, right? But we took a tennis ball into the restaurant with us. And the tennis ball was on the table. And we said, so the problem is, using hand, the problem is that once you kind of hit the ball, if you see it's going the wrong direction, there's nothing you can do. What you need to do is chase after it. And kind of doing the hand motions, like chase after it. And we're like, what you need is one of these. Because actually you can pick the ball up, you can throw it, you can run after it, you can tap it around. That's it. You need this as a character. And he was going, no, that sounds like that severed hand in, what was it, the movie?
The Addams Family?
The Addams Family. He goes, we can't have a severed hand running around. And we said, maybe think of it more of like a glove. Maybe it's a glove that's come to life. We can put a personality onto a glove that's come to life. That would work, wouldn't it? And he's like, yeah, that would work. So that's where Glover came from. And it worked really well. And it was lovely just being able to sort of move this character around and bounce the ball and tap the ball and chuck the ball and everything. And it worked really, really nicely. Absolutely.
I'm going to see if we can get Andrew back in on that. But hello, Andrew. Hello. You can't hear us?
Andrew, we can't hear you. You've got to talk. See if you talk and we can hear you.
You talk for
we
us?
can see you.
You can't see us, I don't think.
Oh, well.
So, yes, Glover has done very, very well in recent years. There's a lot of videos dedicated to that game for the N64, for the PlayStation. And unfortunately, Glover 2 never came to be.
It got a long way. It got to Alpha. So it had been worked on by a lot of people for a long time, probably about 15 people for about a year. and then it was cancelled. It was cancelled because the lead platform was the N64, and N64 cartridges are super expensive to make, like ridiculously expensive to make. I think it was something like you have to buy them off Nintendo at something like $12 or $13 each, but the maximum you can sell them into retail was $17.50 or something. So you had something like $4 or $5 profit, was the maximum profit you could make. But out of that, you've got to pay for all your marketing. You've got to pay for the inventory. You've got to pay for all the packaging. You've got to pay the developer for the product. And if you estimate the wrong amount of inventory and you buy the wrong amount in, you're stuck with all the inventory left over. And in fact, that was a problem of Glover One, which hit them, which was that they'd ordered 600,000 cartridges and they'd sold about 500,000, which left them with 100,000 cartridges all paid up, sitting in a warehouse they couldn't sell. Which meant overall they lost money, even though they sold 500,000. Even though it was really popular.
I think I'm back.
You are?
Yep. So, we're chatting about the history of.
Yeah, I heard some of it, but I couldn't get all of it working. I'm really sorry. It's very unusual that I get kicked off the internet. My internet's incredibly good because I'm alongside Codemasters. I live by Codemasters, which is just weird. But anyway.
There you go. We were talking about the history of Glover there and how far you got to completion on Glover 2.
Yes. Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. Did someone leak the ROM out on the internet? I think someone might have done. I think there was a demo that went out there.
Yeah, but it's all a bit sort of broken pieces.
It's all broken.
Lots of it's lots of just kind of individual little bits and pieces. I don't even know if it was a build that was as far progressed as we got. I think it.
Do you have
every month we used to do a build, and we put it out on a cartridge and we gave it to the testers to test, and whether the ROM that got leaked out there is the latest version that existed. I have no idea.
Do you have the latest build?
Andrew, it's a Blitz Games. Go and get it.
I might do somewhere. Yeah,
you've got that crate in the loft. You've got that crate in the
loft.
Yeah,
might be worth bringing along to one of the conventions you go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's only so much I can sort of heave into my car, but yeah.
Now, one thing I did not know you guys worked on until I put these questions out on Twitter, and another license game I was very surprised to hear you guys worked on it, was the Burger King games.
Hey, yes.
3 Burger King games. They're awesome.
Please tell me more about your collaboration with Burger King.
Oh, I think I needed to go in my attic before I came on this interview.
It basically starts the story starts with a Blitz party, otherwise known as Fusion Frenzy.
Yes.
So, we were obviously a very large, developer come 99, and Microsoft approached us saying very confidentially, we're producing a new console and we need some games, and we would like you to do something that's very, family orientated. And we want to do a party game. Can you come up with a party game? So it was called Blitz Party, and it went all the way through development and production as Blitz Party. Everything was about 4 controllers, four players, 4 controllers. But if there's not a human in one of the positions, AI takes over. I have to say our programmers did a flipping awesome job of that, because I was kept worrying about this, going, they're going to be rubbish. They're going to be rubbish. AI is always rubbish. And actually they play really well against you. And there's so many different kind of games in there as well in that pack. Anyway, unfortunately that game was supposed to be bundled with the Xbox, with the idea that it encouraged you to buy controllers.
Yeah, it was
supposed to encourage you to buy controllers. I think even the premium pack was supposed to have another controller. And this was kind of supposed to be the Fusion Frenzy pack. And right at the last minute, they changed the name from Blitz Party, which we kind of knew they probably always would. We had nothing to do with that. They changed it after we gave them the master. It's amazing the way they can do that. And they, basically, when it came out as a standalone game, as opposed to the way it was supposed to come out, which was bundled, which was a bit of a shame. Anyway, you asking about the Burger King games. The thing is, they were absolutely delighted with the reception of Fusion Frenzy, and the individual, executive producer that we were working with, then said, we've got this kind of, the digital platform coming, the game store coming, we'd like you to start working on something for that. So some small mini games to put out on that. And I think we were starting to knock around some ideas, but then for some reason that all fell apart. That all fell apart, but at the same time that was falling apart, they got approached by Burger King.
No, it was a few years on because it was for the next console. It was launching the next console.
Yeah, no, it does all work out because the next console came along about 18 months later. It was like ridiculously quick. The Xbox One did not last in the marketplace for very long at all.
The original Xbox OG, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they then said to us, look, Burger King has approached us to do some games. They're thinking kind of mini games. This is kind of your speciality. You were starting to work on these mini games anyway. We want to launch these and we've got 10 months to do it because it absolutely has to come out on the launch of the Xbox 360, because it's going to be a promotion for the Xbox 360. So we signed up the contract, thought it was awesome. We loved Fusion Frenzy, loved the relationship we had with Microsoft and everything. So we started working on this, but then the penny dropped. I'm not sure exactly where the penny dropped, but we'd already started development of like, wait a minute, you're keying this in to launch alongside an Xbox 360, but all the customers who go into the Burger King don't own Xbox 360s, they own Xboxes. So if you expect volume sales, you need to go Xbox One, Xbox Original. If you want to help it promote the Xbox 360, then they need to work on the Xbox 360. And they were going, yeah, okay, to do that. And we're like, that's two different machines with two different specifications. And so they said, well, yeah, guys, you've just got to do it.
Yeah.
And guess what? We did.
We did it.
Nobody realizes that those discs, I say nobody realizes, nobody thinks about it. Those discs are just labeled as Xbox. They work on either. You can stick it into an Xbox One and it works. You can stick it into an Xbox 360 and it works. And they are actually
one of the only games,
builds.
if not the only game that does it as well.
I think, Microsoft had to do something in the 360 and in some sort of software update to make sure that the disc wouldn't be rejected. So it was like a dual formatted disc because they are entirely different games. They're entirely different masters because it was a very different machine.
Well, you say entirely. They have different features. They are different ROM images, effectively.
Because it's the same as writing a PlayStation game and an Xbox game, which obviously we've done. Like all of our games were coming out on multiple formats, so it was just like we didn't expect to do an Xbox and an Xbox 360 kind of game in the contract that we signed. That there was no mention of different formats, but then actually it ended up being mastering onto the same disc, which is kind of cool.
It was all completed, 3 games in 10 months, on time, shipped on time.
That's what we had a reputation for doing. That's why Blitz Games did a lot of film titles and tie-ins and stuff, because we
delivering on schedule was the most important thing, and we had a fantastic reputation for that.
What was the collaboration between you guys and Burger King? What was the?
It was weekly.
Did you get free burgers?
It was weekly phone calls, actually, with Chris, who was the project manager. We didn't make all the weekly phone calls. They had Crispin Porter, the PR agency. They had some people from Burger King. There's some people.
They used to always have sort of like board meetings, but on Skype, I think it was, wasn't it?
Probably Skype calls, conference calls, basically, once a week, going through, trying to describe what was happening and what the games were, and just with some sort of crazy ideas being thrown in by people who make and sell burgers, an advertising agency that has no concept of anything but bizarre and crazy ideas. They came up with Sneak King. Okay. Just, hey, we got this idea. This creepy king can get rid. They didn't call it creepy. Obviously, they'd have got fired, but he comes around and he surprises people with a burger in the street. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of stalking, isn't it?
Make that into a game. It's like, it has all the elements of gameplay. It's like, no, it doesn't.
No. I mean, you can tell that the big bumping or whatever, that was obviously a Fusion Frenzy game that we were going to make sort of for the next Fusion Frenzy. So that was kind of that was our design. That was fine. And somebody came up with, and I think this was probably Burger
King. The little motorbike game.
Just said, we want to sort of have like a Mario Kart game, only we want the king to be the main character and we don't want him to be in carts. So we'll stick him on these little motorbikes. And so that was their contribution. Ours was the bumper cars.
It was all a bit mad. It was all a bit mad and it was all a bit rushed, but it was kind of funny because, I don't know, it's kind of like high pressure, but it was over before we'd actually started to get stressed about it because it was kind of like it's done and dusted. It was so quick.
I think, Andrew, to be fair, the team themselves took the brunt of it. I mean, me and you were in management by that time, so we weren't on the sharp end of it. I mean, the team did a brilliant job. They did. And they pulled a lot of hours to do it.
Yeah, well,
but they're all proud.
I just didn't know you guys worked on those games, and we've spoken a few times, and again, they're another. Internet infamous games.
Managed. We did the contracts and the legals and chasing the invoices and all that kind of stuff. But when it actually came to the physical design coding, to be honest, that was off with the team by that time.
Sure. One last game I want to talk about during your Blitz games years is the unreleased Titan AE game.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
What fun was that?
Very close to completion, if I'm not mistaken.
Very, very, very.
We've got discs.
I think,
but they were demo discs.
Yeah, no, but there was like a magazine demo disc, which I think is pretty much a master. I think it's mastered.
Definitely looking to see if I've got that one kicking around.
Yeah, I think it was at that stage where you would have been kind of sending it to Sony and just asking them, is this compliant? I think it got to that stage. So they might have had a few issues with it. But no, what actually happened there was that Titan AE was from Fox Studios. I had to go and visit 2121 Century Boulevard, which is Fox headquarters, otherwise known to you and most people as Nakatomi Plaza, because that's Nakatomi Plaza from Die Hard. Had to go there several times. Even did the stairwell one time. We had a fire alarm and I had to rush down the stairwells with everybody else. I'm thinking, this looks familiar.
Wow.
So anyway, that's where all my
broken glass.
In fact, that's the time I went and saw the Alien stage set. It was when I was there visiting one time. They took me out around the stage sets. Anyway, back to the film. They wanted to do basically cartoon Star Wars is how it was kind of sold to us. They'd bought the Don Bluth studio, to make it. The problem was that they'd had a little bit of a problem in the fact that Don Bluth Studios had just finished Anastasia, which is a beautiful movie. I have 3 daughters. It's a beautifully artistic movie for girls. And then they were going to get this lot to do a cartoon Star Wars. It sounds like an okay proposition when you paint it like that, but the problem was that we'd all just seen the latest 3D graphics come out with Toy Story. So they then had a big, massive dilemma of like, we do these kind of cutie cell animated cartoons, and look at Anastasia, it's beautiful and very artistic. But if we're doing cartoon Star Wars, that's going to appeal to teenage boys who love tech and they love all this new 3D graphics. So they then got Blue Sky in to do some of the space scenes and render the space scenes fully in 3D. And Blue Sky, who went on to do
Ice Age.
Ice Age, that's it. They went on to do Ice Age, and that's all fantastic. So the movie is a combination of 3D rendered graphics from Blue Sky and cartoon animated characters from Don Bluth, which are all cel shaded. Doesn't really work. Now the problem is that as it went through production, they realised more and more and more that this isn't actually gelling very well, and anybody who's ever watched the movie will completely agree with that. But we'd already been commissioned to make the game. We'd have been commissioned to make the game, so we were making the game and we were just cracking on making the game. And then we were supposed to launch alongside the DVD and the video. In fact, alongside the video, the VHS video. So we had 3 months after the theatrical release. Theatrical release happened. We were about between alpha and beta at that point. We'd seen some movie clips of this and we knew what was coming and everything. On the Monday morning, they got all the stats in from how this box office had gone for the weekend. So they open on the Thursday, get all the weekend box office results in. Monday morning, looked at the box office results, absolutely appalling. They had a big board meeting, top of Fox, fired everybody connected with that movie, including Don Bluth and Gary Goldman.
It was very sad.
And everybody just got annihilated, basically. And all merchandise, they tried to pull it from all the shops, and all deals were cancelled, and shops were sending stuff back because of all of this. And of course, there's us sitting on this game that we're working on and going, oh my God! And we're just like, well, we want to finish this. We think it's really good. And we sort of carried on for a few weeks, just basically trying to save the project. But they just weren't interested. They were having none of it. So I did a few trips to a few people. The dev team carried on because what else did they have to go in to work on? They couldn't work on anything else. The irony is, that obviously then, so the game didn't find a publisher and it didn't get completed. Almost completed, but not quite. Irony is that DVDs were being launched that Christmas. DVD players were just being launched, and a massive, massive push. And a lot of the DVDs that were produced were of mature content, which you can't show off in your high street stores. But one of the DVDs that was being pushed and promoted then was Titan AE.
And it actually did really well.
Perfect cannon fodder for putting into the stores. So all the stores selling the DVD players that you're walking down the aisles and you're seeing, they were all showing Titan AE. Because this was kind of content for everybody. As a result, Titan AE DVD did amazingly well because loads of people bought a DVD and said, yeah, chuck that in as well. I'll have one of them because that's just what I've been watching. It looks interesting. Kids will love it. So actually, Titan AE DVD did phenomenally well. But it's
funny little story. Yeah.
That's a shame.
Blue Sky obviously went on to produce Ice Age, so they actually did very well from the whole getting pulled into it to do the 3D graphics.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think they just got bored, didn't they? Didn't they get just get purchased by Fox? It was just like, yeah. Anyway.
There you go. And I have actually skipped over and very quickly tell us about what happened with Pac-Man 3.
Very quickly. I mean, these stories are going on and on and on.
I know. I'm sitting there and I'm remembering, they did Pac-Man 3 as well.
I mean, frankly, we're all stuck at home nowadays and we can just carry on talking. And we love like reminiscing about this stuff. That's why we put it in book. I mean, for goodness sake, it's like we stuck it all in a book. Although actually, no, we never did the Blitz book because that would have even more stories, but most of them would be litigious. But anyway, yes, Pac-Man World 3. I mean, we were absolutely
thrilled,
yeah, to have been offered Pac-Man. So because
it came off the back of Frogger because we'd done a really good job of Frogger.
Because we'd done a good job of Frogger and everyone recognised that. And actually, the only reason it was pulled is because Namco wanted to take control of it because they're going, oh my God, actually, like Frogger can be reborn on modern console. Konami, sorry. Konami, yeah. This has got a sort of future. We can bring it back from sort of the old 8-bit days, and it can make decent games and stuff. So they took it back to do it internally.
Look at Frogger 3, but don't look at the official Frogger 3.
I know. They took it back to do it internally.
No, because it makes us look so good with Frogger 2.
Yeah. Because then they messed it up. They took it back because they wanted to do it as an internal project and messed it up. But obviously Namco thought, well,
and for those of you who don't actually have the time to go and look at the video, they put a backpack on him and made him stand upright and made him look a little bit like Lara Croft. Okay, that's what they did with Frogger 3. Seriously?
It's like, anyway, although, you say that, but the funny thing is, so Namco thought, well, if Konami can have a load of success with Frogger 2, then they were bringing back Pac-Man, and we ended up not doing Pac-Man 2, but ended up doing Pac-Man World 3. But to be fair, we did have the same sort of issues. They wanted now a big roaming 3D game and stuff, and we tried really hard to sort of try and make sure that it had the ghosts that had the same sort of behaviours and picking up the pack dots and the teleport gates and stuff. We had loads of fun trying to characterise all of the things that were in the original 2D maze, but now in a wonderful 3D world. And it did really well. I mean, we loved it and we made a really good game. Although I think Philip may tell you another story. I was going to
say there were some development issues.
This was another Don Bluth originated idea, was it not?
Don Bluth?
Don Bluth done some of the original artwork for Pac-Man World 3. Whether that actually ended up being what you was sent over. But in my research for Pac-Man, The Complete History Part 2, a lot of the original artwork was done by him.
To be fair, he may have done
He may
some
have
of
just
the
lost
artwork.
his job, as we've just talked about.
Yeah. No, but no, to be fair, I think there was a Pac-Man cartoon, and thinking about it, he probably was in some way involved in that cartoon. So maybe it comes from that.
I don't know.
That wouldn't surprise
Your
me.
research is better than ours, and also probably you're relying on our memory, which is always dangerous. No, so we had a few issues of the development. I won't go into all of it, but basically it got cancelled halfway through production. And I had to jump on an aeroplane at a few hours' notice to go over to the headquarters building and ask them why they cancelled it. And cutting a long story short, I actually managed to get them to uncancel it. Or actually they didn't know. They said officially they had cancelled it. What they could do was give us a new contract, to do another game, on half the budget, called Pac-Man.
But we were halfway through. Anyway.
So anyway, that's kind of, that's cutting a long story short. But anyway, but one of the big, issues of that game also was that, I can't remember exactly which producer it was, but a lot of producers, so I'm not going to paint that one individual producer as saying this. They always go with bigger is better. Bigger is better. It has to be. I mean, let's be fair, they're Americans, so it's built into them. Bigger is better. Bigger is better. But actually, some of those levels on Pac-Man World 3 are insanely large. I mean, we had the same problem actually in Mickey 2.
Epic Mickey was a classic.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the problem's in the title. It's like, so I have to say that we always desperately wanted to actually make smaller levels and more tight and more compact and more fun, quite frankly. Whereas
you've got a certain budget. Do you want to spread it out over 20 hours or spend that same quality in 10 hours more quality or something? And this was always a bit of an issue.
It's better to make things a bit more compact and less sprawly. But anyway, that was another issue we actually had with Pac-Man World 3, and especially as it was then taken to mobile, because there's a PSP version and it's like they're the same size levels, and it's not suitable for portable gameplay. The levels are just too large. But hey ho,
there we go.
I think a lot of people. It's interesting. We read reviews of our games, obviously, but a lot of other people are reading them not knowing all of the backstory and not knowing how you arrived at what you arrived at. And they also think that you're happy with it. It's like, oh, I've shipped it because I'm happy and it's finished. It's like, no, we shipped it because we had to. It's like,
of course.
What do they say? A great art is never finished. It's abandoned. And that was one of our favorite expressions, because actually you do get to a point where you've got dates you have to hit. You just go, right, we have to make a call on this. Do we just axe that feature, kill that off, do some kind of workaround, because we have to hit the dates. The dates are the most important thing. And then so when you ship the game, people are saying, oh, it's a bit of a shame they didn't think of this and they didn't think of that. And it's like, no, we did think of all those things. We just weren't able to put them in for one reason or another.
Well, it's still a good game. I still like Pac-Man World 3. I still enjoyed my time with it.
Still a bit too big. It's sprawly.
If you've got a few minutes, because there's massive politics in games, do you like this one? The game with
Bad Boys 2.
Oh,
I did see that on your list.
Yeah, it's the game of the poster. I don't know if you know that.
They didn't have any rights to the characters. They didn't have any right to the scenes. They didn't have any right to the script. They didn't have any rights to the car. Basically, it's the game of the poster. They did have the rights to the poster.
It was a very, very odd sort of thing, because we'd done a lot of games of movies, and this was Empire, and I don't think they had, but they'd somehow signed a contract. It's like you could make a game based on Lord of the Rings because it's out of copyright, but clearly there's somebody that's like made a film that's kind of copyright. Like they'll have you any angle they can, but the actual original wording. But they sort of like had signed up the film, the name of the film, but they hadn't got the director of the film to agree that there would be a video game. They hadn't got Will Smith and Martin Lawrence to agree to it. He drives a Ferrari, and Ferrari were not going to license the car, so we couldn't use the car. We couldn't use the actors. The director didn't approve of there being a PlayStation game. And it was just like, what the hell are we supposed to do? There was even a joke about, well, we said, well, we'll just have like two cops in Miami sort of like fight. And they went, not sure you should even base it in Miami. And we go, no, come on. We've got to. So it was like, but it certainly wasn't like based on the same sort of places.
And it's quite interesting because one of the reviews
it was just a little bit of a mess.
The character likenesses are not very good of Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. No, because if they were, we'd have been sued. So we deliberately had to make them not look too close.
Yeah, which is a really, really weird thing. You have to go out of your way not to make it too close. But then it came towards the end and we were like, how are you going to sell this? They licensed the poster. That is a licensed poster. And by the, so they found that you are allowed to, if you're going to produce merchandise, you can do something. So it wasn't licensed in the correct way. Anyway, but
my YouTube listicle mind is shooting like the games made by posters or something along those lines. It's a YouTube video waiting to happen.
There was funny old politics that goes on, but you know what? I mean, yeah.
But that was all in the past. Since then, you guys have done Kickstarters with releasing old Dizzy games that were never finished back in the day and putting them out. Yeah. You've done the Kickstarter book here, the Oliver Twins, the story of Kickstarter book with Fusion Retro.
We did this thing with DJ Slopes, who made a long video.
Oh yeah, we did these on Nintendo games.
And I'm very happy to say that the first game I ever completed, Fast Food, your old game Fast Food Dizzy, is also one of the first games that my son got really, really into as it got remade for the Switch.
Hey.
Oh yeah, so that's what happens. That's what happens when you get locked down. Cool. It's like you kind of got to do something. And no, I mean, we were obviously as Game Dragons consulting with various companies, and that was one of the companies we were consulting with. And they were making a programming package for the Nintendo Switch called Fuse. And we were enthralled by the fact that people could write their own games on a Fuse quite easily. And we thought that's really good. So we were working with them and as consultants, you give advice. And some of the advice is we got to make some like cool games as like demos to showcase what this can really do. Because we were really impressed by the language and how easy it was to make these games. And we played around with it in consultation. And then we were I remember it was coming up to Christmas, whatever year that was, and just saying,
19.
Look, your key thing is you need some showcases. You need to be able to say, you could write like games of this quality. And they're going, what? Are you prepared to sort of like write some old Dizzy games on it? And it's like, well, no. I mean, I said, it would be quite fun to do it. And I think it would do it really nicely. And in many ways, I'd love to do it, but I just don't have the time. We just don't have the time. And then we got thrown into lockdown and suddenly we found that we did have time. And
did have time.
We did have time. And it was kind of, well, to be fair, we were busy with other things as well. But you know what? It was one of those things. It's like, yeah, it would be kind of fun to go back and actually just make something. It did start
life as, look, we used to do these games the original Fast Food was done in 3 or 4 days. So it was like, look, how long can Fast Food take? It's like, this is quite a powerful programming language. We'll give ourselves a month. That should be more than enough.
It did go more than a month. And it shouldn't have taken a month. But we were in the zone. Back in the day, we were in the zone. It was just the two of us. We had bought our own house and a lot of takeaway food and stuff. Now we've got families and all sorts of other things going on in our lives. And you don't get time to sort of get in the zone and really concentrate on it. And I had to relearn sort of programming in their new language, which is like kind of basic, and it's really nice. And so, yeah, we ended up writing Fast Food for Nintendo Switch.
Absolutely. Cool. And you had the new Dizzy game as well for the ZX Spectrum Next.
Yeah, that's longer than expected.
Wonderful,
as well.
That was also, a very long awaited game. And
how long did that take?
And more recently, there's a website called Panavox.com.
Oh, yes.
And we look like we might be doing something else.
What's all that about, eh? Who could possibly say? I mean, the thing is, we did the consulting, and we were going around doing university lecturing and various other things. And then we went into lockdown and it all went a bit weird. We got back into sort of making some stuff and thought, you know what? We just want to go back and make things and allow people to make things, easier. And we'd been sort of in our consulting roles and in our university talk, it was like, there are so many opportunities. It's incredible. So why the hell do developers keep on making roughly the same stuff that's been made before? And it was just our sort of, it's a little bit of a kind of rant at the end of our university talk of like, look, it's such a blue sky out there. It's like everyone's got incredibly powerful machines. Think of the amazing things you could make.
Don't just copy everybody else.
Don't copy everyone else. It's like, I mean, one of the lines I would use is like, to programmers on the games courses, it's very common that they were. Hello. Little, can you come in the way?
I've got a little girl that's coming to see me. Sorry.
That's all right.
Go
on. Anyway, so, no, they were all copying Overcooked. We saw so many students copying Overcooked or, that flatfall, whatever it is. And we were saying, it's kind of been done, you know, stop doing the same thing. And one of my challenges out there, and in our university talk, we talk about Pokemon Go. And we said, look, this is a fairly small team that did something that just took the world by storm, because what they did is they took a few pieces of technology and lumped them together. So it was kind of a geocaching with Google Maps location, with
very nice license.
Very nice license, a sort of trading game and stuff. And we said they threw a few things together, all cloud and connected and stuff, and it went ballistic. And we said, like, it's completely novel. Now, why don't developers look at something like DeepMind? Google DeepMind, you know, there's a piece of technology that's quite interesting that is completely free with tutorials, plugs into Unity. Make a game on that. Because we said, if you made a game like that on that, it would be completely unique, like if you were using it to what it can do. And even if you couldn't sell that game, you've got a CV that's incredible and anyone will give you a job if you go, oh yeah, it's based on Google DeepMind. And that's kind of like one of our things that we say. And so we said, please do something original. And everyone just goes, oh, it's so easy for you to say, just do something original. If you could think of something original, why don't you just do it yourself? It's like, actually, we've got various ideas. We're always trying to come up with ideas and thinking, actually, when it came into lockdown, it's like, yeah, let's just do it.
There it is. And you don't want to be spilling any beans yet on Panavox? We're keeping tight lips.
I'm afraid not. No. We
keeping tight lips.
We know that when we finally announce it, we'll have copycats. We will. So we want to be so far ahead that anybody that contemplates being a copycat will realise that we've got a lot of space between us and them. That's not.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Coming soon, though.
Absolutely.
Get on over there and have a look. Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you.
For any creatives out there, go and have a look at Panavox. See if you can work out what it is. And if you are a creative, you're a writer, a game designer, an artist, an audio guy, sign up on the form. There's a form there.
And then we'll let you know.
And then we'll keep you informed first. And we might even ask you to become an alpha tester or an alpha or beta tester.
Ooh, what could it be, guys? What could it be? So, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this today. A nice lengthy chat with the Oliver twins. I think we covered quite a lot there. Obviously, not just Dizzy. It's not all about Dizzy. You guys have a very, very wide history with the Burger King games. Why don't you get asked about them more often? You know. So, thank you so much. Is there anything you guys wanted to plug before we go, or was it just?
No, I think we did all that.
Been doing that all
We've done it all. So,
no, absolutely. Thank you very much. And I have to say a massive thank you to that video that you created. I mean, the amount of work that you put into that.
That was how he spent that first lockdown.
You made our parents proud.
Yeah, I did. I still, that was one email I'm definitely keeping hold of. That is big time. I was really proud of that. Really proud of that. quickly flipping it around now. For me, like when I started doing this YouTube thing and looking at the history of games, everyone looked at it from the American point of view. I would go into retro game shops and people were talking about how the 32X was no good in the UK and how much we used to play on the NES and how big Mega Man was. And it just wasn't what our history was. So I always knew that one day I would do the history of the UK scene, and obviously I wanted to cover Dizzy one day, and I was just too nervous to do a franchise that big, which is probably the biggest retro gaming 80s mascot. So, I'm finally glad I finally did it. So
thank you.
There you go.
It's funny you should say that, because when we were making it, it didn't feel like that. Genuinely. I mean, we always thought that we were late to the spectrum and that we'd kind of missed the opportunity to make great games of the spectrum. And now people look back and say, well, what were the big games on the spectrum? And actually quite often there are. It's quite nice.
Was it 7% of the entire UK gaming market at one point?
It actually got to 15% at one
15% of the entire UK gaming market was at one point Oliver Twins video games, which is quite saying. I'll tell you what, we'll end on one final question, which came in the chat right here. Let me find it. Hey, quick question, something small I thought of earlier. If Dizzy one day hatched, what would be inside?
Oh, well, I always that game.
Yeah, I made that game. Look, hang on. God, where was it? I did just put the damn thing down. There we go. It was that.
Chicken Run.
No, the thing is, I'm not going to take any credit.
Why we always say this.
Yeah, and I'm not going to take any credit. Obviously, it's an Aardman film, and Aardman were brilliant, and they were lovely to work with, and I just got massive respect for Aardman. But like when we signed up to the game, we only had a year to make it, and it was like we learned what the film was. We did end up with the script and the storyboard. And I just said, well, this just smacks of, sort of like a puzzle game of how to escape. And I said, it's just Dizzy. It's just Dizzy. It's just like, it's just
Dizzy's just hatched. He's just hatched like a chicken.
And now he's picking up, he's trying to find teaspoons and stuff. And
if you look at the gameplay, it is just go and pick stuff up and take it to solve the problems. And it really was. During development, it was just like, well, this is just Dizzy's hatched, isn't he? It's
like, would you ever attempted to animate, to draw one of the eggs in the film as a Dizzy? As a Dizzy character, or any of the other?
No. But you've got the characters who are Ginger and Babs and the old Sergeant Major one or whatever. And you can pretty much map them onto the Dizzy sort of yoke folk. It's just like, it's quite funny how it's kind of similar. So it's just, Dizzy and his friends all hatched and they turned it into Chicken Run, because that's what the game feels like. The cast
of Chicken Run. There it is. There it is. Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. And I appreciate having you on.
All right.
There we go.
Cheers.
And we will cut the interview there. Wow, that was a long one. Thank you, guys.
That's all right.
Ooh, that was quality. I appreciate it.
We dropped out a few times, and I hope that's not giving you too much of a problem.
No, I've got editing. But hopefully the way this works is it should actually give me, I'm hoping, like I say, you guys are the guinea pigs here, but it should send me free audio files and free video files of high quality. And I'll be able to just plonk them all together in one big line, and it should be nice.
When we disappeared, the other one was talking, so therefore you sort of like, you can focus on one maybe while he's talking.
I'll clean it up. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so
fingers crossed.
It's very unusual. I mean, I have been bumped off occasionally, but I don't know. It's a bit weird.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm probably going to try one more time, and if it happens again, then let's go back to Zoom. Let's try that.
So did I actually tell you what we're working on?
No, but there are other people watching.
Yeah, so I was just going to say...
there are other people watching, you know that.
There's other people watching, so you can't...
So I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you now.
Oh, right, okay.
I think I have had a conversation with you separately saying we would like to get you as one of the early people onto
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Because you've kind of got the skills that are required. And I think you'd have a blast with it. I mean, we are starting... People at the moment, we're asking people to sign confidentialities, so we'll ask you to do that.
Yeah,
but we are starting to wind it out to a few people. Andrew's heading this up, and it's gone out to about 10 people so far.
Yeah, maybe 10. Yeah.
What like YouTubers or game developers?
Couldn't possibly.
It's usable. It's usable.
See, I literally have no idea what this is, at all. Like, I don't understand. Like, is it a game? Is it like a studio?
It's very, very different. So we don't want to tell people what it is. It is kind of a new format and kind of a new media.
There we go. Exciting. And David Levy's just said, ain't nobody here but us chickens.
I used to be able to do all of the quotes for Chicken Run. I did all the voice casting. I went around all the characters. I'm not going to go into the long stories or whatever, but we got all of them, and it was all the original people apart from Mel Gibson. And there was actually a funnier story on that one. But it was so much fun because I went into the recording studios with all of them. And yeah, they were fun days because like coding during the day and then occasional meetings to actually go and voice record with the real actors. It was fun.
Interesting. And it was actually David Levy who gave that little quote there. He's the actual person that asked that question earlier about how we watched the I assume QVC advert for the original Dizzy game for the NES.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
And actually, that was the first time I played through the NES one because I was always really, really obsessed with the Mega Drive release.
Yeah, I think that one game was a little bit too big as well. To be fair,
I've only ever completed
it.
I think I've only ever completed it officially once, possibly twice. I've completed it more times since then using save states, but it's a big game.
Why have you beaten these things multiple times? Haven't you got? How do you find the time to do that? It's like bloody hell.
I genuinely
remember beating Mario 64 and thinking, right, there's not going to be many Nintendo games that I actually completely beat.
I mean, I don't complete many games, and I haven't completed it in many a year, in all honesty. But for me, it was like a big moment because obviously I loved Dizzy as during the home computers. But as soon as I got a Mega Drive, the Christmas of '92, the Amstrad became the dustiest appliance in our entire house. Like, I did not touch a Dizzy game or anything on an Amstrad for years. And then when I finally went into a shop and saw Fantastic Dizzy, I was like, whoa, no way, he's coming over to the Mega Drive. I remember exactly where I was and what I had to do to earn the money to get that game. And I remember I got really far into it and I was like, this isn't too bad. And then I got to, wow, you got to collect all the stars as well? Gee.
Like I said, very big.
Yeah.
Too big.
But eventually, one day I did it.
Yeah, brilliant. Have you tried Wonderful Dizzy?
I've played it. I haven't completed it, but I played it a fair amount.
That's the right size game. I mean,
right, okay.
It's pretty amazing what can be fitted into a Spectrum.
You can play it on the website.
You can just play it on the website in the browser. But
it will play on an original Spectrum.
That's a nice size. That's a nice size game. It's really nicely designed. Going to take a lot of credit for that one, but it's got some brilliant scripts.
Yeah. And I noticed one of the little pickups was a little Pac-Man as well, wasn't there?
Yes. There's a reason for that. Oh, there's loads of little side jokes and comments in there. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, guys, thank you so much. I've got, what is the time? It is 7, so I've got 1 hour until I need to start streaming until early hours of the morning.
Good heavens.
Good luck.
Yeah, exposing a scam tonight on Kickstarter. That's the plan. So, So, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and taking so long out of your day and filling in all those gaps with the Blitz stuff. That was some great stories there that, I reckon I'll be turning into videos. That Bad Boys 2 one was fantastic.
Well, if we had more time, we'd be turning it into a book, but I just think we'll get in trouble for it.
Yeah, probably quite a lot of licenses you need for that, covering the Blitz games days. So much love, everyone. Thank you.
The Empire ever purchased.
Yeah, that's for sure. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye. And that's